Good morning, it is Phoenix Amore. So listen, first of all, let's talk about the hair. This is how long my hair has gotten in that time frame that you guys have kind of been watching. So the one thing that I need to stress, I do understand there's this whole natural hair thing and this whole natural hair kick. Now, here's the thing. My hair is very thick. Now, I was speaking to somebody at my son's boot camp graduation where I said I'm thinking about if I want to go natural or not. Still something that I'm thinking about. Now, some of you guys are on that whole natural hair thing because of a spiritual kick. I think that's great, but I think also it's become something that people are pushing a little bit too hard. And I think you have to be very cautious about how hard you push on that, because now you're kind of basically telling people, right, that if you don't wear your hair this way, then you're not considered black or you're not considered this. That's a dangerous dynamic to get into, because some of you, even though you're wearing your hair quote unquote naturally, you're coloring your hair, so you're not wearing it as naturally as what you're claiming. So I push back on some of the people in regards to that, because when you get too pushy about where trends are going and the new thing is to embrace your blackness and all that, I completely embrace my blackness, but I still am going to wear my hair how I want to wear it. But one thing that it made me think about is I actually had befriended a while back. We don't speak anymore, but there was a woman who happened to be connected to a childhood male friend of mine, right? Somewhat like a brother at the time, but dynamics are such that kind of got severed because of other drama and the connections he had with the youngest father. Y'all know how that goes. When people know people, you have to kind of cut the ties that are not as important to you. But it's interesting because this lady, who happened to be the cousin of this male friend, used to be quote unquote brother of mine, she was saying how he was saying this and that and this and that about me, and I used to wear my hair natural and all that. That was not true. And I remember looking at her going, when did he say that? So his mind had recollected some things about me that weren't even correct, which is very ironic, because I was like, I can't believe he said that. That's not true. I've never done that. I've never done that. So all this time in his mind, he will have had it in his head that, this cat did this and cat did that, and a lot of it wasn't true. But even deeper, I have to say this to people. This is the one that's brother speaks Hebrew and all that. So understand something that's major with this. They didn't know the depths of my knowledge when I talk about spiritual stuff, because a lot of the times people are not ready to know that you know as much as you know. And so the thing about it is, when you first meet me, if you look at me, look at how I look. The first idea somebody says, pretty girl, used to getting everything she wants, blah, blah, blah. No, completely opposite, very independent, grew up that tomboy. I've shared all those dynamics with you. So the assumptions, and then as people get to talking to me, if I share that deeper side of myself to a person, it's all of a sudden where it's like, well, she has a lot of layers to her, a lot of layers. But what happened, and it made me so aware, is when she said she wanted to wear her hair a certain way. And what happened with that was she asked this guy, this male friend of mine, it's almost like asking his permission. And I remember it's shocking me, because I'm thinking to myself, why do you need his permission? It's not a boyfriend, it's not a husband. So understand something. I'm very much so independent minded, especially if the person is not somebody I'm dating, because there's a traditional aspect to me in the respect that if I'm dating somebody that says, I prefer your hair like this or prefer your hair like that, I don't mind making changes for somebody like that. I do, however, mind just because you're Muslim or just because you're whatever religion, when you look at me and say, well, you need to be wearing your hair natural, you may end up with some issues with me, because when I decided to cut my hair pixie, I cut it pixie. And the one thing about it is, when I talk about the hair, right, having memory, I really feel like that's what happened. So when I cut it off, it was almost like it was just a release. And it's the strangest thing when you have some people who are mature and self-aware, that even though that barber and I kind of had a weird dynamic to us, because we're almost a little bit alike. He was very strong-willed. He owned naturally a barber shop and a tattoo parlor and all the stuff, this building. So he's business-minded like me. So we had this odd dynamic where we kind of like jabbing each other a little bit. But he said, when I came in, I said, I need you to fade the back of my hair up. I want you to taper the back. He was like, you cut your hair off. He said, you going through that free woman that free woman phase, and I laughed because he was right. It's almost like the freedom of me cutting my hair was like, I don't have to have this long hair. But even as a guy, he understood it. So it's cool when you meet certain people who are mature enough and understand life enough to be able to see certain dynamics like that. But going back to this woman, when I addressed her, I said, you don't have to ask so and so permission to wear your hair a certain way. Now, trust me, he's a control freak. But even more so, what I pointed out was the fact that he does smoke weed a lot. I want to get into that because I want to talk about that memory, his recollection of how things supposedly were even with me. I'm like, where did he get that from? So sometimes I wonder if people who smoke kind of forget in that aspect. But where I'm going with this whole thing was the conversations even he and I had, right? If you're talking about people that are aware and caring about you, I said, you, and he did admit it, folks, that he smoked too much weed. He said, I spent X amount of money on weed every year. So when he was doing the books for his business, even that jumped into his face. So all this I'm putting together. So now you have control freak that smoke weed. Where am I going with this, folks? Recognize yourself in some of the quote unquote characters that I bring up in my own life experience. So moving on forward from that, she was not necessarily the type of person that I could see myself hanging out with, because it's one of those things where it became one of those female competitive things. Yes, fellas, it happens even with women when they start being competitive because they may feel like you're more confident or you're more attractive. So I started learning to cut myself off from certain people like that, because I don't feel like competing with you if you're my friend. If you're my friend, we're supposed to be trying to bring each other up, not being some little catty competitive thing that I didn't even know I got into with you because that's how you were feeling. You were feeling away. So all these dynamics, if you see when I'm blogging this stuff and bringing this into an awareness for people, understand when I make decisions about certain situations, right? I'm very much so taking 2 steps back, taking a higher view. Now, moving into the decisions I make with my oldest son that's here, not the one that just graduated boot camp, the one that's here. When you have outside people all nosy and thinking they know everything because in their mind only a man can raise a man. I've told you guys all this dynamic and all that. Understand something though. In that household, this is me stepping back where I said there is another young man in that household, literally the same birthday as Xavier's birthday. Understand something. This boy right now, he's been trying to make the basketball team and hadn't had success yet. See, I'm not saying this to bash him. I'm saying he hadn't made it yet because he doesn't have enough height. And so these two talk. But this is a dynamic that you have to understand. In order for me, and that is his stepbrother, by the way. His Xavier's father has a stepson that has literally the same birthday and they're the same age. It's the craziest thing, but that's real. So one of the things that I've kind of pointed out to him, and he understood, I said, you don't want to. And he's chill with it because he's thought about all this for himself. He's like, even if I said, if you've thought about living there. And he's like, no, my dad likes doing his own thing and he works and he's busy. These are the conversations his father and I have between he and I. So it's very annoying sometimes when you have outside people who start twisting stuff up. And that's the confusion that sets in a lot of the time where we're like, who was saying that when there's a communication between us? But where am I going with this? I said, in order for you not to hold yourself back, in order for him not to feel like he's having to compete with you, this is why it's better that you're living here. I want people to hear what I just said. That's been in my mind all this time because you have now this stepbrother that has the height. They're both athletic, but you have the stepbrother that has the height. He has the work ethic. He's already going to be at a certain level in sports and whatnot. You have the other stepbrother who's trying to get himself back into that. You don't want to mix that up and have one feel insecure and one feel like he has to hold himself back. So understand, when all the family members think they know what's going on, finally, when he even ran just the one meet, which we now know there was a lot of BS with the times, they can see all this time that I knew what I was doing with him. So I don't feel like fighting people anymore about the decisions I make about him. This is where I'm very cautious about the kind of coaches that end up working with him, because when they start being nosy and stuff and trying to understand family dynamics, they end up causing more of a mess than anything. So now, here's the one good thing about what's come out of some of this stuff with basketball. People are now noticing smaller players don't necessarily mean they're weaker players. By weak, they still can be very proficient and whatnot. So understanding agility, again, when I say don't put too much mass, you can put some weight on him, but don't put too much mass, because he still needs to be able to move quickly according to what position he's going to play. So that's why when the lady was saying, oh, is he going to play forward? I'm like, I doubt it very seriously. What I am doing is going to groom him, and whoever he works with has to understand that, into a realistic role of what he would actually play, whether it's just going to be a collegiate level. Whatever happens, that's still understanding. He's probably going to be about 6'2", 6'3", from what I can gauge, but I still need him to have the agility, because realistically that means he'd be playing a point guard or a guard. So knowing that about people, that's why I put that in the videos where I'm like, okay, I'm always paying attention. I'm about 5'5", almost 5'6". This lady that's saying forward, she's 5'1", so she's here to me saying, oh, he's really tall. I'm like, no, he's kind of tall. But that's, again, staying grounded in everything. So what did this video just cover? It covered the fact that in every situation, if you're paying attention to how you're moving, if you're paying attention to how other people think, before you let them influence you too much, understanding everybody's situation is different. So from that lady, from the woman who was friends with my ex quote-unquote brother, her power she liked to put into men per se. Well, I'm opposite. So even though I could have been good for her in some capacity, I could not wait for her to get to that reality of, you know what, I don't need this approval of men all the time. So that's the thing that I wanted to stress to some women when you're talking about feminism and all this stuff, even with the men who are like, oh, what is she going to turn her son into? If he's just living there with his mom, he's going to be soft. Not hardly. And most of the coaches that work with him that will have kept it real anyway know that he has an assertive side that will come up when he's performing athletics. So that's everything that I need to say to people this morning. You guys make sure you have a very blessed day, and take care.